Hi again. I'm delighted with the reception of my video on the books that have inspired me. And yeah, I am doing more, and that's what I'm going to do right now. There's just so many. Someone had mentioned doing a book club, and it got a lot of thumbs up in the comments. So maybe, yeah, I think that's a great idea. Maybe I could pick a book if you guys are into this. I will make it so it's affordable and easy to get by an author, and we can read it and then maybe come back a month later and do a discussion about it. And I'll talk about my feelings, and you can add your feelings into the comments section if you're into that. I think that's a really great idea. I think it was Jason who suggested that. Thank you, Jason. Now, okay, this is the second part of the books that inspired me. Now, these would be books that have, like the first section, I'll use a lot of different things to come up with an idea. So, for instance, you'll see, because of the Lovecraft documentary, how I drag things like Jungian and chaos magic and other concepts such as like the time he was born and the period. And so, like, even a book that could be a fictional book, like the Dennis Wheatley's Strange Conflict, that has been a great inspiration for me in other ways. It played a part, made me think about how to write Valpurgis Night, for instance. So everything is a value. Nothing, and what I do is I don't have it with me now. I keep notebooks. I keep journals, and I will say something in a book that sticks in my head. I will write down that, and then I will try to extrapolate my feelings about it. Even if you have no intention to ever write, it's a great way to open your mind up to different things. Now, and it fires off things in your own head. Now, because of the success of the Lovecraft documentary, Believer Providence, which looks like it's going to be quite successful, people have asked me about a Lovecraft book. There are no Lovecraft books or novels as such, because there's only one book published in his lifetime, and that was a very limited edition run of The Shadow over Innsmouth. But there are numerous collections. Now, where you get them, there's a whole series now, very inexpensive. Now, I bought this one in Dallas a couple of years ago. This was a special version that was that was printed and produced by the Barnes and Noble bookstore chain, and it came with a really nice poster in America. And I just like the look of it. I know it's a mass-produced thing, something special about it, but it's my go-to book now, and I'm in bed or somewhere to read the stories. Now, the thing is, if I was saying getting there's no bad story. He's never written a bad story, okay? But if you want to get a good insight into him, I would suggest you get a collection that has the following stories: The Shadow over Innsmouth, The Haunter in the Dark, Dagon, The Horror at Red Hook, The Call of Cthulhu, Charles Dexter Ward, and I'd make them an absolute must to have in the stories. And anything else is still good, but look for them. Particularly, my two favorites would be probably Dagon and The Call of Cthulhu. But I absolutely love the Hunter in the Dark too. So get yourself a Lovecraft compendium, assemblage, whatever, and enjoy and cherish it. What's the beautiful, because they're mostly short stories. They're very easy and quick. They're good reading at bedtime and things like that. But like I said, there's all beautiful illustrated versions and things like that. Now, the next book is another classic, The Fairy Fate in Celtic Countries by W.Y. Evans Wentz. Now, Evans Wentz was an American. He was the first Westerner to translate the Tibetan Book of the Dead. He was also very interested in Ireland and Irish folklore, and he traveled around the Celtic countries. And this is probably 120 years old at this point. It's quite an old book. It's still a great book though. What makes this so important is that it's a proper anthropological insight. He went to the places and spoke to farmers. He spoke to women who lived in remote cottages. He got out there and he got the stories directly in first hand. And they are a combination of mythology, folklore, uh, great, just amazing stuff. He spent a lot of time around this part of Ireland as well, and it's one of these things that it takes an outsider, an American or another outsider, to do a proper study of your own culture at times. And this book, it can be bought. It's usually quite inexpensive because like the Lovecraft books, the copyright is up on it. And it's if you want to dive into, and what's amazing about this, even though it's about 110, 120 years old, it doesn't read like an antiquated book, not at all. And so you can, and it's, as you can see yourself, it's quite voluminous. So that's a very good one. Now the next one I had previously, in the previous #1 video, I reviewed, or I spoke about David Yallop's Deliverance from Evil. I want to speak about his greatest book, and the book that made me a conspiracy theorist. Well, it got me into conspiracy. I wasn't a conspiracy theorist, but it got me into conspiracy. David Yallop's In God's Name, an investigation into the murder of Pope John Paul I. This is pure dynamite. People say, oh, well, I watch conspiracy videos and I see, I send them to my friends and they read them and they don't believe them. This is the book you can give to someone. I was actually even thinking of making a documentary on this, that you can actually give to someone and they will see the world in a different way. Now, what inspired this was that there was the Vatican banker, an individual called Roberto Calvi, was in London. This is back in the late 70s. It was bashing down the door of the Grand Lodge of England's Freemason office in London, demanding to be let in. He said his life was in danger. Now, this is the Pope's banker. He was found hanging from Blackfriars Bridge. That's a symbolic, killing, in London the next day. It ties in the mafia. It ties in the Vatican corruption. It ties in the European Union corruption. It ties in the weaponization of left-wing radical groups such as the Brigate Rosse in Italy. It ties in. It absolutely proves that Pope John Paul I was absolutely murdered. That's beyond doubt when you read this, because he wanted to open up this. He wasn't an inside man. He wasn't a company man. He was kind of like accidentally became Pope. He really shouldn't have. And he said because of financial scandals involving in certain, the Vatican Bank was heavily invested in things like contraceptives. Well, by issuing things like prohibitions and Catholics using the pill, they were investing in companies that were producing the pill, the contraceptive pill, weapons manufacturers. There's dirty, worst kind of banking. And they had no problem doing deals with demons and devils in flesh, and this is the book that if you think there's no if you read this book and you think there's no conspiracies left in this world, it's just amazing that there's something wrong with you. It's unbelievable. So, In God's Name by David Yallop. This next one was very instrumental in making me think about how I was going to approach the Druid Code. This is the David Lewis Williams' The Mind in the Cave. He also wrote a book called, a good companion to this, called the Neolithic Mind. And it's about essentially the development of everything coming out of our early ancestors, and he goes a lot in depth into things like the Neolithic art. He travels all over the world, but there's an awful lot of thing in Europe as well, in Ireland, in the megaliths and the rock art in them. And he's from the multi-chain theory rather than the link theory. He actually talks about, like, one of the problems with with research, and this is why he's one of the better academics, is he says that research today, academic research, is primarily, this is the main gift this book gave me. It taught me how to research, is that there's a chain link form of research, right? So say you have a hypothesis and then you prove it, or you prove it, but you feel strong enough to add another link to the chain, which takes the theory to another level. and so on. But what happens is, if some information comes along back in the chain that proves, say, link number 4 was incorrect, the whole chain is falls apart and discarded. Where he produces something almost like a screw type version of research, where different strands of holistic knowledge are intertwined at the same time. So suppose you have 10, you're approaching something with 10 different uh, insights into towards a conclusion. Say you discover that this one is a false. Well, the other 4 are still operating, so it continues the research. So that was what this is. This is a book is really a very good book to teach you how to research yourself. Also, the subject is fascinating, and his other book, The Neolithic Mind, is a good companion to this. And it makes you see how the human brain is almost like involved in a cosmic dance with through things such as art and language. And it's got great illustrations and photographs and drawings in it as well. Very, very, very good book, and very readable. Very readable. Now the next one is, and there's a few of these around. What I liked about this one was it was pretty straightforward, right? Great pic. Look, I love the cover illustration, right? This is The Queen's Conjurer: The Life and Magic of Dr. D, Benjamin Woollett. Now, what I liked about this is he portrays D as a very likable character. And yeah, and he was a likable character. By all accounts, he was a very nice guy. His father was just a customs agent on the Thames, and he came from quite modest backgrounds and rose to incredible power in the not only the royal court in England under Queen Elizabeth I, but also throughout Europe. He had tremendous pull. It talks about his relationship with Kelly. It shows him as a very human person, but it also has great in-depth insight into his magical conjurations in terms of what was the impetus behind him. And that's a good one, impetus, because he was the one who came up with the term the British Empire, and he called it the British Empire. And he knew that he really came to prominence when he was the Queen's royal astrologer, and she asked him to do the horoscope. Now this was dodgy stuff back then. If he gave her a bad horoscope, it would probably get his head chopped off. But the horoscope he gave her was bang on, that she would become queen and she would become one of the greatest rulers ever on the royal throne in England. And she came up with the concept of the British Empire, and he had basically magical insights to select wood from trees on the 4 kingdoms: England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and France, I think, 5 kingdoms, and they would become the ships used to fight the Spanish Armada. Now, the Spanish Armada should have easily defeated England. They were wrecked by the storms, and even they had ships that should have been blew the English fleet out of the water in the Solent. And just things went wrong. Like, one of the ships had so many cannons that when it fired, it was heard in London, and things would happen like every single cannonball missed the ship that it was firing at. See, magic works. Also, the relationship between him, his wife, Kelly, and Kelly's wife is very odd. In many ways, they'd fallen in love with Mandini, who was a kind of an entity that appeared as a very sexually charged young lady who I don't want to go too much into it, but basically they gave them the Enochian language through Kelly mostly. Dee was mainly described. Now, Crowley said that Kelly was taking the piss more or less out of Dee, but he wasn't. There's absolutely no way Enochian could have been made up by someone like Kelly. A fully formed grammar, a language that came out in sessions involving a scrying mirror and a scrying glass. So yeah, that's a great read, that one. The Queen's Conjurer, The Life and Magic of Dr. John Dee by Benjamin Woollett. It's that cover, look. Oh, I love that. Okay. Oh, and the last one for today is an unusual one. Okay. Now, You often find things to do with magic and the occult and sorcery in books that are not necessarily to do with magic and sorcery. Biographies of certain individuals, you find out the most interesting stuff. Now, there was a very good biography of this woman's husband, William Butler Yeats, by, I can't remember the man's name. He also did a biography of James Joyce, but in that biography of Yeats, he covered very much in depth Yeats's obsession with the paranormal magic. You know, he was the founder of the Golden Dawn in Dublin, and he was very heavily involved in the Golden Dawn in England, and there's a famous battle on Blythe Road, wherever it was, with Aleister Crowley, and the whole thing that's covered in that book. His wife, Georgina Yeats, was an equally interesting woman in that regard. She was very heavily involved in the occult and seances, and she was in many ways the female version of him. But they had a very interesting. They were almost like a partnership more than a romantic marriage, which was very common back then because people generally got married because of kind of like partnerships and stuff. But the book has very, very good details into the things like the induction into the Golden Dawn, and also how they were basically trapped in Ireland during the Civil War, and they were basically in hiding while the country was being shot up in in 1922, and it's amazing, really. It's a very good read. Now, a lot of it would be about her life and her family and stuff like that, and you can see I've bookmarked a lot of the stuff to do with the Golden Dawn because I got into an argument with someone from the Golden Dawn, and they said, "Well, you don't know much about the Golden Dawn because a lot of the rituals are secret." And I said, and then I went down and I produced this book, and I said, "Oh, really?" And they were all here, so. It was good for winning an argument, but there you go. Becoming George: The Life of Mrs. W.B. Yeats. Again, don't if you're interested in paranormal, don't only limit yourself to paranormal, because you might find something about the paranormal in other books, just like I found something about magic in this book. So that was part two, and I guarantee it'll definitely be a part three and maybe a part 10. And I hope I hope get out there and read the fucking books. Enjoy life and build up those neural pathways, because this is a lot of a lot of this stuff on the phone and the computer and the internet like that. It doesn't stick into your brain the way this does. It just doesn't. It just and you can say, oh, I download PDFs and all. Yeah, okay, but there's something about the physical act of holding this on the train or in bed or sitting and having a cup of tea. There's just something about it that makes it go in there easier. And so buy books, build a library, because I tell you something else. Everything is digital. What will happen is that this will all vanish and it's gone, and we will be the next Library of Alexandria will be a torching of the digital thing with codes online. We will be the scribes of the future. See it, or the archives as it's the future. Keep the Hypatia alive in you, no matter what.